And I'm going to call in Lara. Lara has been listening the whole way through and has been also attended the Safe Birth for All launch in St. Stephen's Green during the week. And as part of that campaign and as part of our campaign in AEFJN, we have put together a short list of kind of asks, a kind of a call to action. So Lara, do you want to share or do you want me to share?
Hi, thanks, Brian. Good evening, everyone. I'll share my screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Lara. Go ahead. There you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Lara Kelly, and I'm working with the Dominican Sisters in Cabra. I first of all just want to share a quote that really struck me from the campaign launch of Safe Birth for All last week. It was from Nadia Ramuta, who I think is on the call with us, from the MMMs. And she said that injustice is when your geography becomes your destiny. And I think that was a really powerful quote. And I think that is why we are all here tonight, to challenge that injustice. So I want to just very briefly talk a little bit about the global context. So in December 2022, the UN member states adopted a resolution committing to ending obstetric fistula by 2030. And I suppose so the context and the timing of tonight's webinar is to fit in with the 23rd of May, which is the International Day to End Obstetric Fistula, and also to coincide with the campaign launch last week of Safe Birth for All. So looking at some ideas for action, and I suppose with these ideas for action and these calls to action, I'm speaking both to those watching here in Ireland who have contacts with policymakers, funders, NGOs, church communities, and also speaking to those watching tonight in Angola, Nigeria, and beyond, and who are working daily on this issue on the coalface. So first of all, to educate ourselves. I'm just going to minimize the gallery view. Sorry, one sec. To educate ourselves. So to investigate this issue further after the webinar. So to read and watch the resources available. And in a moment, I'll talk about some of the things that we hope to share as AEFJN. To educate ourselves. And at the campaign launch last week, we saw a very powerful film, a 7-minute film directed by Derval Glynn and produced by Paddy Daly. It's by Yoke Productions. And we will be sharing these slides, so you'll have the YouTube link. But it's a very powerful film that aims to promote better maternal healthcare globally and really allows the voices of those affected by obstetric fistula to be heard, and to share, I suppose, the difference that surgery eventually has made to their lives. There's also an article in the Irish Times from Tony Pike's recent visit, which she has described so well, her visit to Angola. Women with obstetric fistula can be ostracized by family and community. So that's also worth a read. And I suppose the urgency of this webinar and the urgency of this issue is really in those numbers that were mentioned earlier by Shane and recapped by Brian. 2 million women worldwide who are untreated, 200,000 women in Uganda alone, and in Angola that the average wait for surgery is 12 years. So staggering figures. The UN's End Fistula campaign has an interactive quiz, which might be good for those of us working with younger people. It asks you to put yourself in the shoes of someone who may face obstetric fistula. It puts you in the shoes of a young woman facing early marriage and walks you through the different scenarios, the different decisions that she might try and make for herself, whether to continue in education or to marry young because of financial pressures within the family. And sometimes even, although you might choose a particular path, the quiz goes on to tell you that actually that door isn't open to you. So it's a kind of quite an insight into, I suppose, the lives of young girls and early marriage. So some of the things that AEFJN Ireland will do: we'll be sharing this webinar recording broken down into its constituent parts. We'll share the PowerPoint presentations that you've seen this evening, so you'll have access to all of the links, the data, and so on. In our research for this webinar, we did a lot of reading and found a lot of other resources which we can also share with you. And I think there's probably more that we can say than we can actually manage in one evening's webinar. For example, the issue of child marriage and forced marriage. So we do hope to follow up at a later date. And we will also be supporting the Safe Birth for All campaign. And so I wanted to just speak a little bit about some of the key asks which were outlined by Father Edward Flynn at the campaign launch last week. So some of those I've already mentioned in terms of things that we can do. So education of ourselves on the prevention of obstetric fistula, prioritizing secondary education for girls, and including a module on obstetric fistula for midwives and nurses. And so we've heard from Petra about some of the work that's happening there in terms of education, and from Dr. Shane Duffy on the training that's happening on obstetric fistula surgery. Diplomacy, so to engage with key stakeholders like the UN, the WHO, and so on. Advocacy, to raise our voices for the rights of girls and women, including access to healthcare, but also to decent standard of living, the right to education, the right to be free from discrimination and violence. And in health, the provision of equipment and of training, and the provision of shelters or waiting houses near obstetric care facilities for rural women and girls. And we saw the photograph there in Tony's presentation of the foundations being dug for such a waiting house. And then on communications, to amplify the voices of women and girls and to ensure that health information is imparted at community level. And I think it struck me just to listen to Jennifer speaking about the story of Moira, who heard about the obstetric fistula surgery on the radio, and that her father had heard it too. So to speak to people through the channels that are accessible to them in languages and in a language and a way of speaking that is accessible to them. And so what you can do, so some ideas for action: to amplify the message, to tell one other person about this issue, to share the link to the film Fistula, to share it within your community, within your religious community or your workplace, and to tune in again in the future. So as I said, we do hope that we might come back to this issue in the autumn. And then to call for change. And with the EU elections on the horizon for us here in Ireland, to ask your candidates how they will raise the issue of obstetric fistula in Africa as part of overseas aid funding. So those are some ideas. I'm sure some of the speakers will have other ideas. Some of you listening may have other ideas for action as well. And it is an issue that we'll be coming back to. So I'll hand back over to Brian for now, and we'll be sharing these slides with you later on. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you indeed. You might stop the share there. That's great. Thank you indeed, Lara, for that. We're almost bang on time. We did say about 90 minutes, so we're about 3 minutes over time. So we're sorry if we've kept you too late. But just to say that this webinar didn't happen all by itself. It's been a while in the planning. And as Lara said, we did quite a lot of research before we kind of put together how we would like to begin to present on this particular topic. So I have to thank a lot of people really, and some of them you haven't seen this evening. You heard Michelle Robertson's voice maybe once or twice in the back. Michelle works with communications with the OLAs, and she has helped us in the preparation, the publication and the advertising of this particular webinar, and has been involved in the technical end at the back there that you can't really see. I'm very grateful to everybody in AEFJ and those who were on the screen this evening and those who've been supportive at meetings and otherwise apart. We had Abigail at the very beginning, we had Sister Mary Delargy and Bridget Corrigan, we had Tony, we have Jim Owens, Jerry, Kevin Mascarenas, Jerry Ford from the OLAs, or from the SMAs. I better say that again because I'll be in trouble if I say Jerry Ford from the SMAs is correct. And then very particularly too, I have to thank Dr. Shane Duffy, who's made himself available for the entire evening, and indeed to Jennifer Philpott-Neeson for her contribution too. So I think I've pretty much covered everybody, I think, but more than anything, I really want to thank all of you for staying so long on this particular call, and an issue that can be particularly difficult, I suppose. But for many of us in our congregations, this issue speaks to issues relating to women and children. And for many of us, this is part of our commitment in terms of our congregations of sisters and brothers and fathers. So, and also because it is a case that we have representation in Africa, so that this is why we have particularly chosen this issue, because it reflects our commitments and because it is definitely more prevalent, if you like, or a more difficult issue and a more persistent issue, as Shane pointed out, in Africa. So we're hoping that in the near future, we will send on to you everything that Lara has spoken about. And the one call we have to you is to share it with somebody else. And we do promise to come back again in the autumn, perhaps with a little bit more on this issue. So we will sign off, but we'll leave the room open for a few minutes if people want to have a quick chat. But we might just ask the AEFJN team just to hang on the call until everybody's gone, and we'll just have a few minutes to ourselves just to kind of tidy up, if that's okay. So thank you all so much indeed for tuning in this evening. Thanks again. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks very much. Excellent webinar. Really, really powerful witness.
Thank you, John. Thanks very much indeed. I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your contribution also.
Thanks a million for all that. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
Thank you, Brian, and everybody involved.
Thanks,
It was
Maureen.
an eye-opener. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's a lot in it, isn't there, really? There's some very nice comments in the chat. We'll save all of that too. Thanks, Jacinta. Did you get wet today, Jacinta? Were you out in a procession in Nuneaton today and you got wet? I saw you. You can't do nothing, you know. You can do nothing.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Father Edward, you have your hand up. Sorry, did you want to unmute yourself?
Go ahead there, yeah. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I see that now. Go ahead, Father Edward, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to AFJN for all this wonderful work. Is it possible to put me in contact with Lara somehow? Is
Yes.
Lara still online?
We can do that, yeah. We can do that. We have your email address and everything, but I can certainly put you in contact with Lara, yeah.
Please, if you can pass it on to her, and also
Tony-
read.
Tony has your contact details, Tony Pike, I think. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, Tony.
She
will
has.
do.
Well, then we'll
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
Tony to pass it directly on to Lara.
And to Shane Duffy also, please.
Okay. We can do that. No problem, Edward.
Thanks very much.
You're
Thanks for joining us. It's great to see
Where else would I be this evening?
you.
welcome. Yeah, very good. Very good.
But
Yeah. Well, that's partly the reason for it. Like the timing is perfect in terms of the
Yeah.
International Day for Obstetric Fistula, and then with the start of the Safe Birth for All campaign last week, that builds on that, and then we're hoping then to kind of build on it again a little bit later on in the year, so just to keep the momentum going. I know
Absolutely.
that there are others on the call,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
just
you are.
for the
Yeah.
others from AEFJN that were on this evening, just to thank you
Yeah.
so much indeed for all of your work. And I know we
Helen,
had
you want to show your face there to Brian?
hello. Oh, go ahead, Helen and Anne.
Thanks, Brian.
That's no problem, Helen. You're more
Thank
than
you,
welcome.
Brian.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome, and thank you, Anne. You're there also, I think.
Thank
Yes.
you.
My thanks, Brian, to you and to all involved. It was
there's-
inspiring and so
Okay.
informative. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Anne
right.
Marie.
Thank you.
Oh, that's
That's
Jacinta, yeah.
Yes.
Should be
Oh, I'll
Margaret
sit
Mc-
there,
would she be
sure.
Margaret McPhee?
Yeah, that just
Um,
won't change. Keeps going back to my
Yeah.
other name.
She has a number of names depending on what she's doing on any day of the week.
Yes, yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Keep trying to change it.
Okay, no worries.
Anyway,
you're very
it was
welcome.
wonderful. Thank you very much. I've got
Okay.
lots of people I'll share this with now.
Do indeed.
In the
do
parish,
indeed,
yeah.
do indeed.
That's great. Thank you. We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Brian, that was very informative.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Mary.
so
Nice to see you again. Thanks,
Right.
Mary. Mind yourself. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. God bless.
Thanks,
Bye.
Edward. Take care.
Goodbye.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Nina. Thanks, Anne.
Brian, we would have permission to share it on our websites, would we?
Yeah, you have. Yeah. Small fee.
Very good.
Yeah.
Worth it.
It'll be, yeah, we will put it on our own website and we'll share it around. Anyway, I don't want to keep anybody too long now, our own crowd, but just to say thank you so much indeed, because we had a meeting this morning as well and a meeting this evening. So there's been a lot of work gone into it and a lot of back and forward over the last week. So, I mean, Abigail, you really started it off absolutely superbly. It was just, you really set the scene, and then the reflection was superb. It was just perfect, taken directly from Jennifer's piece, which really kind of added to it at the end. And Tony, you brought so much to life to it. Like we were practically there in Angola, and like the faces of the people that were there and the stories that were there, it was so alive. And Shane was, the video introduced him, and then he kind of described the work in prevention and the medical side of it. It really gave lots of different perspectives. I'd say it was quite a full, and then the call to actions at the end then really kind of added to it all. Lara, I have a feeling Edward Flynn is going to make contact with you through Tony over the next little while, and it may well be to do with the call to action. But if we do something again, more than likely we may have Edward himself on, and he may like to do something himself. So listen, I'm not going to keep you any longer, but just to thank you all so much. I mean, it really was superb, and it's like pretty much everybody who started the call stayed on the call pretty much to the end. Yeah. So that's an indication that certainly we were doing something right. And I think of the 120 people that registered, 80 turned up, and there was still 76 or 77 of them still on at the very end. So that's not bad. So anyway, listen, it's 8:45 now, so you can have a half day off
Well
tomorrow.
done yourself, Brian. Well done yourself.
All right, okay.
You're a mighty DJ.
Indeed, yeah. I'm always glad you do that, Brian. You do it really well, and you kind of make it flow, and
A DJ.
and it helps
I
us. It helps
Well,
us to make.
I
it
don't know.
easier.
I had to laugh. He's actually gone now. The real DJ is Elvis, but he's gone now.
Oh no, Elvis is still here.
Where is he? Where is he?
Still here.
Oh, there he is, Elvis. I was just saying earlier, I said, if I say Elvis is in the room, everybody starts smiling. So I mentioned it at the very beginning, but I just smiled to myself. I said no more. Elvis, I believe we'll see you on Friday morning. Is that right, at the meeting?
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm really delighted that you could make it this evening. So you'll be able to help us make out the report on Friday morning when we tell others of some of the work that we've been doing. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance this evening. So thanks again.
Thank you for inviting me, and congrats to all of you. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you indeed.
It's not for the faint-hearted, as they said. I'm not very strong, so I was emotionally really taken, and I tried to find a way to just use my brain and follow. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, it's congrats to all of you.
It's a difficult topic, but it is. It can't be hidden like the women who suffer, and that's the issue. That's the irony of it. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah.
Listen, we'll leave it at that, and thank everybody who's still on the line, in particular to all. So thank you all indeed. Kevin, good evening. How are you? Thanks a million indeed. And Michelle, thanks for all over again. You're fantastic. We couldn't do anything without you, really. Thanks again. And Jerry, go back and paint that shed now. You'll be in real trouble.
We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Okay. Take care. Mind yourself. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks again. Thanks, Navigator. Take care.